So in the past few years, I've created multiple SaaS products, and some failed, some succeeded. In fact, if you look at it, only the last 2 software products actually succeeded. So it was a home improvement marketplace app that did over $1 million in recurring revenue. And a more recent example is Upvote, a user feedback tool doing over $50,000 in MRR. And maybe you can also add this third one, which is my newly launched product, Feedify, which is already doing over $50 a month, which is not much, I know, but in some way it's validated, right? But now, I often get questions around how to launch a SaaS in the most efficient and effective way possible. And like I said, after building multiple SaaS products, there's really one framework that at least worked for me, but gives you like a 99% success rate, and more importantly, can be implemented relatively fast. Because if I learned one thing in SaaS, it's that you need speed. Now, before we dive into it, if you want to have more guidance on building a SaaS, do check out my free SaaS masterclass course, which is linked in the description below. Or if you're ready, you can also get my 5-star rated SaaS course at zero2saascourse.com, which will learn you basically everything you need from, coming up with a winning idea to validation or how to launch and scale, etc. And also, by getting this course, you'll also be able to join my private SaaS community with hundreds of founders worldwide. So the link to this course and the free masterclass is linked in the description below. But yeah, anyway, let's dive into this 10-step process of building and launching your own SaaS product. So the process of launching a SaaS always looks a little bit like this. So basically it's divided in 4 stages, right? So you have research, you have validation, you have build, and you have launch. And, the research phase starts with idea, target audience, feedback, and refine. Then you have the validation stage, which is building the MVP, sharing the MVP. Then you have the build stage, which is, getting beta feedback, building the first version. And then you have like the most fun part, the launch phase, right? So let's start at number 1, idea research. So before we start building or do basically anything for our SaaS product, we need to do research and see, what are the existing solutions in the current market? What are existing competitors? And the funny thing, if you really do great research, you often will see that, the competition might not solely exist of competitor products. So a great example, my own example, for one of my software products, Upvote, we obviously had some competitors in the same space, right? But one of the biggest competitors actually turns out to be Microsoft Excel. Because a lot of product people were documenting their user feedback in an Excel sheet. So when doing research and you uncover that kind of things, you can immediately change your proposition a bit. For example, by writing blog posts on how to do, how to better collect feedback in Excel, right? To target your audience that is actually doing this in Excel. With, of course, a smart mention of your own product as the better alternative, which is exactly what we did. Now, step number 2 is to, research that target audience. So who are they? Where are they active? And what are their pain points? And indeed, how are they now solving that core problem you are trying to solve? Are they using competitor tools or something else? And then it's up to you to decide on whom your target audience will be. And one thing I've learned, it's a good thing to narrow it down. So at first, don't try to build a solution to a big and wide audience, but rather make it a smaller audience, because that will make your proposition, like your ads or the copy on your website, etc., much easier. So for example, Discord started out as a community chat specifically targeted to gamers, right? And only now, they're trying to win market share by targeting business owners. Or, for example, a great example as well is Lemon Squeezy, who are targeting software companies specifically. And they are winning market share actually from one of the biggest competitors, which you all probably know, Stripe. And in a way, it's kind of the same thing I'm doing with Zero to SaaS, my community platform. It's not a software product, but it's, in a way, it's also a great example of targeting a specific audience. This is specifically community built for software founders. By creating this narrowed down specific target audience, it will make the next step easier too, which is talking to your target audience for mainly getting feedback in return. Because when you can focus on a small target audience, you better know how to talk to them, where to find them, and you'll learn quicker about their core problems and needs. So for example, you can start engaging and sharing some of the things you're building in communities related to your target audience on, for example, Reddit or Facebook, etc. And if people are replying or they're posting stuff related to your problems, the problems you're trying to solve, you can reply to the posts and slide into the DMs of the people interacting. And this is actually a great example. So why is the feedback collecting SaaS so expensive? And to be honest, this was one of my own frustrations as well when I started thinking about the idea for Upvote. So I too was frustrated about the tools available at the time and specifically their pricing. So yeah, this is actually a great example that you can find these frustrations and needs from your desired target audience around the idea and problem you're trying to solve when looking it up online, like for example here on Reddit. Now, step number 4 would be to refine your idea. Now, because after talking to these potential users, you almost always need to refine your idea a bit, because what you are thinking initially it'll almost never be the exact final solution. And in that case, you'll have to pivot your idea. So for example, just like Intercom started out with a completely different type of software where a chat messenger was just a tiny part of the feature set actually, it turned out that most users of Intercom were actually mainly loving that chat messenger feature. And so they pivoted into what they are still today, a messenger app. Now, step number 5 would be to build an MVP, a minimal viable product. So now that you know whom to target and how to target and what your target audience wants and needs, you can actually start building an MVP, which is in software most likely is going to be a landing page just to share, your actual product idea and to ship it into the real world. Now, you can build a simple landing page like I do with Squarespace or Webflow or Framer. I actually really, really like Squarespace. I host all of my sites in here, as you can see, and it's just, it's just like a drag and drop builder. And especially for a one-pager like a landing page, it's the ideal solution. I can highly recommend using Squarespace. Now, after you've built a landing page, you need to add like a sign-up form to start collecting users that are interested in your product, to start building this waiting list, right? And for this solution, for the sign-up form, I always use Email Octopus, which is a great tool. It's free up to 2,500 users. And yeah, it just does the job really well. Now, of course, you also need to have like a nice looking page and brand, but the thing you have to remember, don't worry too much about the logo. Just pick a good name and either get a free logo or generate one with AI, or just, or pick a great looking font and use it as your logo. Don't overthink that part too much, because we're only shipping the product right now and we just want to get it out into the world, and it doesn't have to look perfect. So for example, if you Google on Upvote's first version, the beta, basically the beta version we shipped, which you can find on beta lists, it's a very ugly looking first landing page, but it worked. So yeah, don't overthink this part of your MVP. Now, of course, one of the things you also need is a domain name. So yeah, you need to register a domain name to ship this landing page, but also don't overthink this either. Just pick what I call a good enough domain. Like if you can get a .com domain, sure, that's great, but you most likely will not. So use something like goappname.com or appname.app, etc. As long as it's good enough, just use the domain name for now. Now, if you want to ship like a first version, which is basically still a minimal viable product, but as a working prototype, you can absolutely do that. So take a look at this great example here of Jacob, who launched sub.me, and maybe you're also following him on YouTube as well, and you follow this process. But he basically registered a domain name called sub.me. So not a .com domain, but it actually makes sense to have a .me domain. So I like it. I like the domain name, but yeah, don't overcomplicate, just register a domain name. And he actually launched this MVP with this one pager, right? And why this is a good example, this is actually, this showcases the final step in the process of launching your MVP. You need to add some visuals by using default mockups or use AI to generate images, or just like Jacob did. He basically recorded this basic video explainer. It doesn't really matter if it's not the final design yet and the actual product that you're showcasing. This is just to share what's coming up and to monitor if people are actually looking for something like this. And you can do this with building a waiting list, or like Jacob did, by getting users on board with an account, and they can start using this first version that you build. If it's a really minimal viable product, just ship it. Otherwise, just build a waiting list and ship the first version later on. Now, step number 6 is to share your MVP. So obviously, now that we've built a minimal viable product, we need to get this MVP in front of our target audience to acquire the first beta users and to actually build your waiting list, right? And you can do this by using, especially if you're building software, you can use like platforms like BetaList or Indie Hackers, or basically any kind of website or industry related forum where you can get it in front of your target audience. So a good example actually is to, how Dropbox launched their idea with an MVP and a video on Hacker News and waited for thousands of signups before they even started writing one line of code. So this again shows that you don't need much to actually share your product and to acquire the first people in your waiting list, the people that are interested in a product like this. Now, next week, I'm actually going to release a video specifically related to building and sharing an MVP. So make sure to subscribe if you want to learn more about this topic, and we'll dive into that specific topic in next week's video. But now, moving to step number 7, talking to beta users for, again, gaining feedback. Because next up, you're going, again, to talk to, new users that sign up to your waiting list. And as you can see, up to this point, there's really a lot of researching and talking going on before we actually build the product, because before we put in our money and energy, we absolutely have to make sure we have a clear view on what's needed. Now, the biggest tip I can give you when talking to users, don't pitch your product. Don't mention any features. Just show a genuine interest in solving their problems. There's a great quote: users own their problem, you own the solution. So just listen, note down what they're saying, and off call, you can design the features that will act as the solution to the problems. Now, step number 8, decide on your product's first version's features. So after talking to users, you probably exactly know what they really need, and more importantly, what they're willing to spend their money on. So in general, a user wants to spend money on things that are actually solving their problems. That's thing you absolutely have to remember. So go and build your product roadmap and design the features for your first version. Now, how do you build a product roadmap? I actually created a Notion template that will help you build a roadmap to decide on the features, and you can get it for free in my also free SaaS course called SaaS Masterclass, and it's linked in the description below. Now, step number 9, build the first version. So now, finally, the fun part begins. You're going to actually start building the first version. And sure, if you can code, it's a no-brainer, just build it. But if you can code, you have basically two options. You might be able to build a first version with no-code tools like Bubble, but more likely you are going to need to hire a dev, right? So I'd say in general, you'll need anywhere between 7 and 15K for a first version. And it's good to remind yourself that it can be a little bit scrappy, but it needs to work properly and solve the problems of your target audience in a valuable way. And that's why you shouldn't be too keen on saving money, because this will reflect on quality, and you do want to ship quality. Now, the way I always work is I'll use Upwork to find a good developer. So a couple of things I always filter on. It's success rate, hourly rate, and reviews. And by doing so, you will definitely find a developer that's fitted for your product. Now, one very important thing I want to mention, if you work with freelance developers, do sign IP waivers, intellectual property waivers, and NDAs, because this will make sure you can always easily switch to other developers later on without them having like a share in the IP and intellectual property. And, by signing an NDA, you're also sure they're not building the same product by even using their own code. Now, again, not to promote my free SaaS mini course, but if you sign up for my free SaaS masterclass, there's a free template for an IP waiver and NDA. So again, link in the description below. Now, during this stage, as soon as you have like a working prototype, you need to give some of your early users from the waiting list early access to get feedback on a real working prototype. And you can also use the feedback from those users as testimonials and reviews which you can showcase on your marketing site for social proof, which always looks nice when you launch, right? And talking about the launch, we arrived at the last step number 10. We are finally ready to launch. After completing step number 1 to step number 9, this is the time to, go and let the world know about your newly launched product. And if you're in the SaaS space, you can share it on, obviously, Product Hunt, which is the #1 launch platform where you can ship your product. But as we learned in the last couple of steps, you have engaged and talked to potential users on forums and industry-related Facebook groups, etc. And of course, you can launch it there as well. Now, the biggest perk of building this waiting list from step number 8 is actually something very conveniently, because now they can help you build that initial traction around the launch. So from this launch on, you can work with a framework I call the BLR framework. So you start building, then you measure the outcome by listening to user feedback, and then you refine and optimize, and then start building again and start the same cycle again. Now, in order to make this work, make sure to install 2 things. So the first one would be CrispChat or any other messenger to talk one-on-one with customers to get to know your audience and uncover their pain points and needs while using your product. You have to remember that every conversation with your users is an opportunity to learn. So whenever I launch a new product, it's always the first thing I install. And the second thing is to install a proactive feedback tool, like, for example, Feedify, to proactively get feedback and bug reports from your users. Because using such a tool makes sure that users that don't want to talk to support also provide the feedback or report bugs proactively. Now, based on this 10-step framework, you should have a successful launch, even if you get like 0 upgrades and payments, because by doing this exact process, you will learn what your target audience needs, and you can refine and optimize from here. So again, if you need more guidance, make sure to check out my 5-star rated SaaS course at zerotosas.com, or get started for free and sign up for my free mini SaaS course masterclass. Both are linked in the description below. Now, also, if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below and I'll respond ASAP. And also, tell me in the comments below what kind of videos you'd like to see next. And with that, until the next one.